because this might be the inner chronicle of what we are, and we have to articulate ourselves, otherwise we would be cows in a field.
Welcome to Cows in the Field. This is a show in which we discuss philosophical themes in popular films. My name is Justin.
I'm Laura.
And today we're talking the third movie in the Fast and the Furious franchise, Tokyo Drift. And joining us are two returning guests, both philosophers of art, who have a history with this movie, something we're going to get into. First, from our episode on Tampopo, we have Nick Riggle.
Hello, I'm Nick Riggle.
Hi, Nick. And from our episode on Twilight and the Box, we have Matt Strohl.
Yo, yo, yo.
Welcome back to the show, guys. It's good to have you.
Super good to be back.
Very happy to be here.
Excellent.
Especially on this film, yeah.
Oh, we're very excited to get into it. So first thing, we're going to do a quick round robin, opening remarks on the movie. I'll just kick us off so you get a flavor of what this would be. So we rewatched this movie. This isn't a movie that I have a personal affection or kinship to, but watching it the second time, it did rise in my estimation. And one thing that I really liked about it was I kind of felt like it's a little bit like Sean, the main character, goes to Wonderland in a world where rules don't apply and cars can move and violate the laws of physics. Anyway, I thought that was kind of fun. That was something I picked up on this time that I enjoyed. Laura, what do you think? Opening remarks.
I did not know you were going to kick it to me
going
next.
to Laura first. Sorry.
That's fine. I don't know. There's a lot of lore in the other ones. I like the Fast and Furious movies, but this movie is just footloose and fancy free. It's delightful. I remember... I feel like I remember seeing it for the first time in a background at a party in 2006 when it just had come out.
That seems like a good...
And people were like,
Yeah,
is
good.
that the guy from Home Improvement? And it's just a good party hang movie. Have it on in the background.
Good movie
or
to have
give
on
it
in the
your
background,
full attention
for
because
sure.
it rules.
Stroll, what do you got for opening remarks?
I think, before I had even seen this movie, before I had seen any Fast and the Furious movies, because I started with number 5, I was driving a shitty Oldsmobile home from school or work late at night when I was maybe 19 or 20 or whatever. However, no, I was older than that. But I was driving this shitty Oldsmobile, and I slid out and started just sliding sideways right down the highway.
Oh God.
And then all of a sudden I regained control of the car and started driving again, no accident. And I was all by myself and I yelled, "Tokyo Drift!" I feel like I will never not think of any form of drifting as Tokyo drifting,
Yes.
no matter where it happens.
That seems exactly right. I think, and even our son who likes drifting,
Yes.
I don't know does he do Tokyo Drift? He calls it Tokyo drifting.
He does.
Because of the movie Cars.
Because
Cars 2.
of Tokyo Mater.
Yeah,
There's the
Tokyo
Tokyo
Mater.
Drift Mater short, but also got out the same library book about 100 times on drifting. And there's one page that says, "Drifting is all about controlling the car."
Is that how he says it?
Yes.
Yeah. Nick, what are your opening remarks on Tokyo Drift?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the nutshell is that I think this is the film that I've changed my mind the most radically about. I used to think it was just the worst film as a Fast and Furious fan. And Stroll helped me change my mind. And also just kind of as the series has developed, they've done a lot of interesting things to integrate this film into the franchise story. And I'm just, as a philosopher of art, super fascinated by that, the aesthetics of that. But also just now I don't know if it's an exposure effect or whatever, but I just love the film. I've seen it so many times now. And even, I watched it again for this and found new things to love.
This is so great. Let's, all right. So I'm going to kick it now to you guys because, as you said, Stroll helped you change your mind on this movie. So can you guys explain what happened? How did this go?
Yeah, well, so I definitely have a pretty close relationship with this movie because for me, the Fast and the Furious is the ultimate comfort food. It still is. It has been for a long time, even though I didn't get into it until the 5th one came out. So, for instance, when my dad died a couple of years ago, I was absolutely a wreck. And like when I sat down to watch a movie, it was probably the next morning. I sat down and just like watch a movie, do anything to kind of get my mind off it. And this is just like what I instinctively reached for. I put on Tokyo Drift, right? So it's like, the proof's in the pudding, right? That's what I reached for when I was feeling the absolute worst. And Nick, one day, right in the meantime, Nick and I were just talking about the Fast and the Furious movie, I think at a conference that we were both at.
Campus.
Yep. Camp Aesthetics. Yep. Okay. It was a wonderful conference way out in the Utah desert. Super fun. And we were talking about the Fast and Furious movies, and Riggle was like, basically like, wait, how could you possibly like that one? I mean, what's there to like about it? Right. You were like, name one thing about that movie that's in any way likable. Am I getting that right, Nick?
Yeah, that was basically my attitude. I couldn't comprehend why anyone who was into the Fast and Furious would like that one. Yeah, I just didn't get it.
Right. And like, I think, I don't remember exactly what I would have said at the time, but like one thing I would probably would have said is that its existence in the series is part of what makes the series as a whole so sort of jagged and quirky and interesting, right? So in other words, what's cool about the series is in part that it has so many different like faces and like different styles, and it goes in so many different directions, so many different moods. And this movie was just a total oddball. It's essentially like a really doofusy Karate Kid with cars, Karate Kid 2 with cars, right? I just felt like this being a part of the whole was part of what like made the whole so magical to me, right? Is that this movie was part of it. And Riggle was like, well, you were like, but that Lucas Black guy, isn't he just the worst? Right? You're like, how could that guy possibly have been cast in the movie? And I was like, yeah, that's exactly why it's so good that he was cast in the movie, because you'd never expect it. Right.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was sort of like, we're introduced to this series, with Fast 1 and Fast 2, and you're kind of like, you got the Paul Walker stuff and the Vin Diesel, and you're like, okay, we're into like street racing, like, I like to drive fast cars, and they're just fun action movies, and they're ridiculous, and then you get the third installment, and it's like none of them are in there except the very end. And you got this goofy Lucas Black guy, Sean Boswell character, and he, it's just like so kind of the plot is so basic. It's just kind of he's kicked out of his sort of normal routines. He's sent to Tokyo. He's an outsider. They tell you 1,000 times that he's an outsider. The theme is that he's an outsider, and then he tries to sort of like, win the woman by racing the alpha male, and winning. And he's helped along by various generous characters. And that was kind of my take. It was like, what is this kind of harebrained formulaic plot about masculinity or something? Just kind of like super simple, and yeah. And so Matt got me to think a little bit more about kind of what was that film doing in this franchise. I mean, it is really a focused film. I mean, compared to like, it's not a heist movie. It's taking the original theme of Fast and Furious, which is like about, illegal street racing, and just kind of like focusing on that in the sort of drift style of racing.
On that point, though, that it's that it's like, it's more like the first Fast and the Furious movie in the sense that it's like a movie about a local racing scene that sort of starts from scratch in a general way. And part of what I really enjoy about it are all the analogies in the scene. So like whenever in any of the Fast and the Furious movies, whenever there's like a drag racing, like there's like an event or there's a race or people getting together, you always get like some kind of geographically appropriate music, and then you get this like little montage of like usually there's some zoomed in shots on girls' butts wearing like shorts, and then like a guy working on a car, like mechanic, and like somebody like serving drinks, and it sort of zooms around and you go through it. And I really love the way that this follows that exact same pattern, right? It shows you like the girl and the guy working on the car, but it's all like extremely geographically appropriate. It's all like, you're using totally different cars. The music's amazing, unbelievable. Right?
I'm just playing Teriyaki Boys in my head right now, by the way.
Yeah. But every time there's a scene like that, my wife, like Angela, likes these movies too. And every time there's a scene like that, she yells out, "Car party!"
Yeah, I mean, there's something inherently fun about the movie. I mean, even if you don't know anything about the series, there's some really great car scenes, great car chase. Like the central car chase scene is really exciting. I mean, the drifting is super interesting. There's these beautiful drifting shots where there's just like 6 cars drifting in harmony,
Mhm.
like around a bend down a mountain, and you're like, that's really cool cinema. Yeah, so like I think the thing that changed for me, I mean, I think one of the things that Matt helped me do is just kind of like open my mind, like, whoa, there's a person who likes this movie. Like that alone was just like, what? And it's not just a person, like my friend Matt, whose takes on films are always super interesting. But was really, I think the thing that really shifted was thinking more about, I mean, so what happens over the development of the franchise is that they work really hard to integrate Tokyo Drift into the narrative of the entire series. So we realize after Fast 6 that that Fast 3 comes then, right? So if I'm getting the chronology right.
Yes.
So one of the things I actually really like about being a fan of the Fast and Furious movies is that, like I said, there's like 22 plus hours of film, and it's just like hard to follow, even as someone who's watched them all and sometimes multiple. It's like they're super long movies, they're complicated plots, and like it's easy to forget like what happens in what film and who's the villain in that one and exactly who kills whom or who's supposed to have died and maybe came back. And there's kind of a soap operatic character to the plots. And but anyway, what we learn is that a bunch of stuff happens in Fast 6, and then there's a heist and stuff, and then people die, and basically Han, who is this kind of mentor figure in Fast 3, over Fast 4, 5, 6, he actually becomes like a central figure in the franchise, and someone he's really attached to, Gal Gadot's character, Giselle, apparently dies in this epic plane scene. And Han moves to Tokyo, and you realize, oh, that's when Tokyo Drift takes place. Because Han is escaping the Fast and Furious family to go kind of just grieve, basically. And then if you put it in that context, you actually realize that they through the sort of narrative changes over those films 4, 5, 6, Han, you start to see Han in a different light, in Han's character in 3 in a different light. And I now see him as the main character, not Boswell. You think that Boswell's the main character, but you realize that it's Han we're supposed to focus on now as the kind of mentor who's taking this gaijin, in this outsider, into under his wing, and teaching him the ways, the ways of the Fast, the Fast themes of it's all about chosen family, it's all about family, and in general, it's all about loving the race in and of itself. Like there's this great scene where Sean asks him like, well, why do you race if it's not to win? And Han's like, let me show you. And then there's like all these great drifting scenes where they're just doing it for, as our friend T would say, for the striving, as it were.
And also for phone numbers, though. They got
it's true. He does spin around a girl for
yeah, he doesn't quite get the message, I guess, because he ultimately races to get the girl.
Yeah.
Life's simple. You make choices and you don't look back.
So if you don't drift to win, what do you drift for?
You really want to know?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go.
It's really actually incredible, given that the sixth movie had not been written when Tokyo Drift was made. It's really incredible how well it sets up the other movies to go back and inflect it with a prequel story, right? And in particular, like for example, right. So Han's got this melancholy from the beginning of the movie. He's got this like deep melancholy that like is very nicely explained by where we leave off in the sixth one. And you get the sense that a lot of those decisions about what to do in the fifth and sixth ones with Han were informed by his character from Tokyo Drift. But there's a wonderful canvas to work from, right? And like he says all these things that make so much sense, right? He's like, "This is my Mexico," right? Like when the bandit flees at the end of the Western and like heads off to Mexico or whatever. This is my Mexico, right? Which makes perfect sense once you've seen the sixth one, which didn't come out till years later.
Also, Matt, I had a crazy realization this time I watched it, and it was related to this. I was hoping to bring it up. That's a reference to the 1954 film. So have you seen that?
No, I haven't seen that 54 one. No.
So there's a 1954 film called The Fast and the Furious, and
I have actually, but I don't remember it well.
Title from that film, and basically the plot there is there's an escaped convict who's wrongly convicted of murder. He breaks out, and then there's this woman who has this really cool Jaguar. It's like an early 50s Jaguar, and she's like a racer. And there's this race. I think it's called like the International, and they race into Mexico. And she's like prepping for the race, and she stops at this diner, and this guy's escaped, and he kind of kidnaps her, and then like they go down to do the race because he wants to get to Mexico. And anyway, antics ensue, and there's car chases and races and crashes and stuff like that. But I think it's a subtle reference to that early film, which I never sort of made that connection before.
Yeah, that's nice. No, I didn't know about that. And he says, so another line that I wrote down when I just watched it, he says, the Lucas Black character is like apologizing for wrecking his car in the initial race. And Han says, he says, "I'll get you the money, Han." And Han says, "I have money. It's trusted character I need around me." Right?
Yeah, exactly. Dude, I wrote the same thing down to this time.
Yeah. And he says, one car is a good trade to find out what a man is made of, right? So you get this, once you find out where he's just been, what he's just been doing, and like what's just happened, you get this strong sense that what he's saying to him is, I need to know if like you're somebody that Dom would welcome in, right? I need to know if you're like my friends from back home,
Yeah. And I now, so like, that's a good, I wrote down that whole scene because I was like, now I just see that as the central scene of the film. And when I didn't, before, when I didn't like the film, was seeing it from this totally different perspective with Sean as the main character and stuff. I just, you see that, watch that scene, and it's kind of like it's not a throwaway. It's a nice, intimate scene. They're kind of finally making that connection, and you realize, oh, Han's going to be his mentor. But no, it's a completely transformed scene from the later entries in the franchise.
Definitely, they change the meaning of the scene and they make it the most important scene in a way that it originally wasn't. That is right. That's super interesting from the point of view of philosophy of art. That's whoa, you can do that, right? Yeah,
I don't know of other works that are so transformed by later works. I mean, it's a really remarkable, I think, artistic achievement to do that so well. I mean, I think there's still questions I have about, and we could talk about that later, but it reminds me of, there are these, people talk about how beauty can transform us and art can transform us. And like, it's so interesting to see a case where, like art transforms art. It's like giving style to your character, with art.
I'm curious, do you guys, so as somebody who has stopped watching the Fast and the Furious movies at 5, I mean, we may continue on in the franchise, I'm not sure. We own the 4K set, so we should, but we burned out on 5. I mean, there's another way, I think, to appreciate this film if you only watched the first 5 and thus don't really know how they connect up at 6, which is, so I kind of enjoyed this movie as the Halloween 3 of the franchise. So
Totally.
Halloween 3 is like, for people who maybe haven't seen it, it's a movie which diverges quite radically from the Halloween series and teases a possible future continuation of the franchise in which, you know, they don't actually, there's no emphasis on continuity. It's just like other people getting killed in other interesting ways around
Oh, there are
Halloween.
just bad things happening on Halloween.
Yeah. And
a rad song.
I was sort of like taken by that idea in this film, and maybe that was what I don't even know what the filmmakers had in mind, but maybe that is what they had in mind, was like, okay, there's this whole like Dom Toretto thing going on in the first two movies, and let's see how much we can set up like a separate thing, and just maybe then the fourth and fifth movies would just be like, now we're doing this in Mexico, and now we're doing it.
All we need is cars. And we don't need anything else, right? But then they added in Dom at the end because test screenings went so badly that they like shoved Dom in at the very end.
Yeah. So I mean,
right, these movies didn't get. This series was not successful until later, right? So, like, for instance, like Ja Rule refused to be in any more of these movies, and so that's why Ludacris was brought in to replace him. Of course, Ja Rule would have made one more off of one later Fast and the Furious sequel than he made off his whole career.
Yeah,
like, you know, the jokes on Ja Rule, but yeah, like at this time they weren't sure they'd ever get back to the main storyline because the series was just not that successful. And in fact, like, once the series got going again, like, Han was one of the most popular characters. So this wasn't super popular right away, but this did introduce Han, who became crucial to the success of the later sequels.
And I do get
so
that.
magnetic.
To your point, I think, Nick, you said this, you know, Han is the most magnetic and interesting character in this film. Like, he from the first frame, he's just super, like, he has a confidence to him, and he has a weariness, and you want to know more about him. Whereas the Lucas Black character, it's like take it or leave it. I don't know.
I mean, he's just a goofball, and like, that was always my take, and it still is. But like, you have to watch actually F9 to like really love how goofy he is. And actually, the series ends up.
Can I ask you?
The series ends up fully owning his goofiness. And they satirize it, and it's hilarious.
Great.
We may need
one more fact we have to include here that I don't want to lose track of. We're summarizing like the Han intertextuality here, which is, I don't know if you know this, but there's another amazing fact here, which is that Han is playing the same character he played in Better Luck Tomorrow.
I had read
really?
that. Yeah.
Yes. Right. So Better Luck Tomorrow, which is an independent film about like some Asian high school students who like start a little crime. They're like good grade. They get good grades, but they start like a crime ring. And it's with sort of tragic results. So Han plays like a young hoodlum in that movie. And it's like, that's another thing that I just went back and watched that again. And that's something that really inflects Tokyo Drift. Because you can really see him playing the character in the same way, like the same mannerisms, the same posture, right? So you get like even more Han backstory, and it's even more emotional weight is added once you incorporate that one into the mix.
That is interesting.
Oh my gosh.
To just kind of like tie off the initial discussion about my journey.
Yes.
I think the journey has a new phase because I actually weirdly. I told Justin this in an email, but this film is it's weird to me how much I want to think about it. Like, it's just bizarre. I just don't even understand myself. But it is. And I think there's even there's like a new phase. So it's like a return. So I think now my take on this film, so it's actually, Matt, I think I disagree with you again.
Okay.
So maybe your view on this has changed too, but initially I was like, I don't like it. And you're like, I like it because it's such an outlier. And now I actually think we should watch the film as a return to roots. So, so basically here's how I see the franchise, right? You have the first, I'd say 4 are the original drag racing, street racing, urban sports movies. They're about that. And then in 5, we get the heist theme. Right, that's when heists become like the thing for the series, and I think that's partly why 5 is my number 1 in my F&F number.
Me too, for sure. 5's my favorite. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I'm 5, 7, 8, 6, 3, 9, 1.
Oh my gosh.
10-4.
That was
You know, it's
so
interesting.
casually rattled off.
I'll say mine in a minute. I'll say mine in a minute because a couple things have changed. But I was a naysayer about one for a really long time. I was like, one's one, but like I now no longer do that. I now think one is one of the best ones. And
Okay, we have to do another episode.
Yeah.
But anyway,
let me think about my ranking for a second, and I'll deliver that in a minute. But so Justin had somewhere he wanted to go, and let's go there.
But I'm gonna tie off that thought, which is that so initially you might think if you watch the first 4, that 3 is just this outlier, idiosyncratic, weird, and you know you might love it or hate it for that, which is I think where we were at before. And then you watch 5 and you realize 5 is a lot of fans love 5 because it's when not only the heist theme is introduced and it becomes a heist franchise in addition to this car franchise, but secondly, a lot of the deeper themes of the movies that I find more just wonderful and beautiful, themes of like chosen family, of love, of love around this like pursuit or this sport or this whatever, the racing. Those themes get developed and sort of the fast family like grows over the next like 5, 6, 7, 8, which are I think the best entries in the series. And so once you get 5, you're like, oh, the franchise is changing. It's not just a street racing film series. It's actually bigger. It's about these heists and these kind of global, events and about sort of like chosen family and loyalty. And when you plug, so now we have to watch 3 after 6. And so once you do that, it's actually a return to roots because you have this straight racing movie, right? It's no longer it's not a heist movie. There's some Han is weirdly stealing money from the Yakuza, which feels very, very dangerous when you quote unquote have money. And in fact, he has a ton of money from the Brazil heist. And so, yeah, I think now we can watch it not as a weird outlier, but actually as this wonderful kind of focused return to the original theme, which is street racing, but with the Han story, which is like Han trying to integrate Boswell into the fast culture, into the fast ethos of chosen family.
So I agree with lots of that. I do think the chosen family stuff is there right in the first film though too. I mean, not this is I say all this with not having seen 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever how many there are, but which maybe this gets even more explicit there. But I do feel like in the first film and like all those issues about the your loyalty to your family or that's like the central theme is whether Paul Walker's character is going to be loyal to Dom or to the FBI who's his like well they're also kind of his like surrogate family, so there's this kind of like divided loyalty thing, but but yeah, I guess I want to hear Matt's ranking too, because I kind of feel like I'm not as high, I think, as you guys on 5. And I think in part because I really do appreciate, and I not having seen 6, it's hard for me to say, but like I really do appreciate the simplicity of the earlier films, that it's not so big and so, like I know roughly some of the things that happens in later films where these characters are like working, there's like some secret cabal of evil agents and stuff. And I kind of could do without any of that because it feels to me like it's treading into the space of territory that I really quite actually despise, namely in like the Marvel territory. And so I really do appreciate the simplicity of the first 3 really. But I
got to take issue with that. I got to jump in on that. It's not Marvel. It's not Marvel. It's Mission Impossible as comedy. Right. It's not Marvel. It really isn't. So, but like, it's they're always doing something impossible. And the idea is that like that family is the superpower that they have that enables them to like break the laws of physics. So the magic phrase in Fast and the Furious universe is "take the wheel." Right? If somebody says "take the wheel" to you, they become invincible because they trust, because that's what trust in family does. It makes you invincible, right? So this is what like they do become like cartoonish action movies, but they're all Mission Impossible scenarios.
Yeah, I should
right?
clarify. The complaint is not that they're cartoonish action movies. The complaint is this massive shared universe thing that I could really do with that. I really do want to just my only bugaboo about this is I want movies to just be movies and not extended TV shows. That's the complaint.
Yeah, and I think they do jump the shark for this very reason eventually, namely a little bit in the ninth one. I mean, so I was glad to hear Riggle put 8 near the top. I would personally go like 5, 7, 1, 6, 8, 3, 4, 10, 2, 9, Hobbs and Shaw. But so I have 8.
Can you say that one more time, Matt?
What's that?
Wait, Matt, I want to write that down. Say that again.
Say it again.
5, 7, 1, 6, 8, 3, 4, 10, 2, 9, Hobbs and Shaw.
Nick is like doing like calculations.
I want to say
now.
a couple things about 8 because I do think it's interesting that Riggle and I are both interested in 8 because most people think 8 is already jumping the shark. I think 9 is the shark jumping moment. 8 is quite good, I think.
It looks like we disagree on 1 and 9 basically. Otherwise, we're in the same.
Yeah. 1. Okay, I talk a little bit about what I think just briefly, but like so. Well, let's say so. 1, what I like about 1 going back to it, it's like once I've been in this cartoon action movie world for a while, right? Where again, like you say, take the wheel, then you could just jump into an airplane from a car or whatever, or you could you can skydive without a parachute and you're just fine, right? Because you trust your family that much. So when you go back to 1, it's so grounded, it's so physical. You can like. I got a pretty decent sound set up and like you can feel the like vibrations of the car on the road in a way that you can't once it becomes a CGI thing. Right. So like, I really appreciate that. First of all, just that it's like more of a sort of authentic traditional car movie with that kind of muscle car vibe. But also like, I love that like they're all kids. When you go back to like Vin is so skinny, right? And like, it's like you feel like it's like I've spent so much more time with the later movies because I really didn't think I liked the first one. And then when I went back and watched it after like a couple of years, I was like, oh, it's like I get to see what happened to them when they were kids, And I think it becomes really central to like the foundational friendship of Dom and Brian. So, and that friendship even reverberates past Brian's death, past his sort of departure from the movie. He doesn't die in the diegetical world, but like the actor dies and the character disappears. That friendship is still driving the whole movement of the series from the beginning. So, and I think that like the fact that friendship barely even kicks off in that movie, it's like at the end of the movie is like where for the first time Brian like does something for Dom's sake against his own nature as a cop, this gesture of friendship at the end. And like the fact that doesn't even resolve until the fourth one, really, right? Like we don't even really become to the fourth one, but like all of the roots of their friendship are sprouted in that first movie. And that's super interesting to me to go back to that.
Yeah, I feel you. I mean, I think I bumped 3 up quite a bit for the same reasons that you like 1. I mean, kind of just the purity of it. Like it's just a racing show.
Yeah.
And I do love, it's like really nice to go back to that once you've seen all of the films and that just go literally, to the moon almost. Yeah, I mean, I got it pretty high. It's just not in my top 3.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I feel like 9.
I had it at the bottom. I had it like 2, 1 and then 2 at the bottom for forever, years.
Yeah.
So I've done a major reversal on 1. Yeah.
Yeah. But 9, I love 9. I feel like 9 is maybe controversial, but I just love the self-aware satire aspect of it. Like I just
9 is when they bring back Sean.
Sean's back in that.
They also just like I hate it. I really, really hate it when a series is flagging in popularity and it like unkills a character. I that's like a major pet peeve. That's where when Game of Thrones brought here's the rule: if you're bringing a character back from the dead, they have to have the stain of death on them. It's a pet cemetery rule, right? There has to be like a major. You have to like lose your soul if you're brought back from the dead. So like whenever a show just like brings back a dead character with no consequences at all, right? Like I'll make an exception for the Vampire Diaries because they did it better. They had a whole mythology that made it interesting. But like when Game of Thrones did it, for example, I'm just like completely turned on it, right? Because it was just like pandering to the fans. If you're bringing Jon Snow back, he's got to have the taint of death. And that's how I felt when I watched 9. I'm like, you can't just like bring back all the popular dead characters just to like sell. It's like I felt like my interest in the greater continuity, which is what Justin didn't like about it, right? That my interest in the greater continuity was spoiled by the fact that the writers had basically jumped the shark. Like, okay, now we could just bring people back because we want it to be more popular.
Can I ask real quick though? Does Twinkie ever come back? My guy Bow Wow, Lil Bow Wow. Then he becomes Bow Wow because he's not Lil anymore.
Does he come back? I don't think so.
Oh,
question.
that's
I
a
don't think he
bummer to
does.
me. Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Laura, do you know how movie trailers are made?
Don't movie studios make them?
Actually, they're made by independent trailer agencies.
So wait, could I make movie trailers?
Yeah, but first you'll have to learn how. And lucky for you, The Refinery, one of the trailer agencies that makes many of the trailers you see for major movies, has an online training program that teaches you how to do it.
Cool. How does it work?
The program walks you through the process of making an actual movie trailer using the same project files that the real editors use. And at every step of the process, you get feedback from real trailer editors who work at the refinery.
Oh, so at the end of the program, I'll know how to make my own movie trailers?
Yes, and not only that, when you submit your final trailer, they'll review it, and if they're impressed, they might invite you for an interview to work at the refinery.
No way. So what's the program called?
Well, it's called The Art of the Trailer, and you can find it at maketrailers.com.
But if I go, will I have to pay full price for the course?
Not at all. If you use the promo code COWS at checkout, you'll get 20% off for a limited time.
Cows, as in cows in the field?
Yes. So go to maketrailers.com and use promo code COWS for 20% off. Start learning how to be a trailer editor today. Beyond the structure, like where this film falls in this interesting Rube Goldberg structure that's been created by the Fast franchise, what other things about it aesthetically do you guys find appealing? In particular, I'm interested, like in Nick, Matt, like what things convinced you to turn on this movie? Because, I mean, a couple things that I found kind of interesting. One thing is that the drift sequences themselves have this very kind of uncanny, otherworldly quality where I think they really are filming a lot of drifting stuff, but at the same time, it's integrated with CGI in a weird way that doesn't it's like what Fincher was trying to do in Panic Room, where the camera's flying around through things, but that doesn't look quite good. This somehow looks a little bit better, but it also doesn't look real. So there's this it's balancing on a knife's edge between realism, like photorealism, and something that's like heightened and unreal.
Right. It's like when Sean and Han are looking at the square down below, and they've got like the crowds that are already kind of blurred out, and it looks already like that it's not quite right. Like it looks like it has been adjusted in some way. And then later when they drift through that same crowd, it has the same effect.
Every shot has the potential for me of being CGI or being real, and I can't quite tell. And there's something kind of cool about that. That's like, whereas now in Marvel, you're like, I know it's CGI, but it also doesn't look like CGI because it's so like it's the technology is so much better now. But like then I just feel like we're right on that edge where it's kind of interesting. It's like this weird curio for me as an object of the mid-aughts. Anyway, I'm curious for you guys, what other like aesthetic features of the film do you find appealing?
Yeah, I mean, I just say like that uncanniness. I was thinking about that too from a slightly different angle where there's that scene where Sean and Neela remember he's like, I've never seen you drift. Why? And she's like, you've never asked. And then they go drifting.
Yeah.
And it's one of these scenes that actually I think is lovable in the Strollian sense.
Yeah.
Because there's like beautiful romantic guitar music playing. and they're having this like quiet conversation about her past, and they're fucking drifting like down a mountain. Like it's like total nonsense that this
Yeah.
is, even remotely possible. And it just struck me as like, this is just wonderful. Like this is wonderfully weird and like uncanny almost. There's just something, it almost doesn't read as weird, but when you realize what's going on, it's just like,
Well, also
this is bizarre.
what they're saying to each other, the lines are, straight out of a soap opera. I mean, you used the soap opera term earlier, but I mean, like, here's some of the things they say.
The day I got my license, it's the day I got my first speeding ticket. The day after that, I won my first race. I beat this rich kid by 3 lengths. I gotta admit, it felt good. It felt like
everything else just disappears.
no past and no future.
No problems. Just the moment.
I mean, these are just like absurd lines. And these actors, no shade, but to be fair, these are not like the top tier actors, and they're really struggling to say these lines in a convincing way. So it's like, it's like unintentionally quite cringy.
It's
And
because they're drifting, Justin.
they can't concentrate.
Yeah, so the CGI you're talking about, like one thing the movie does that's really interesting to me, especially in the first like 15 minutes of the movie, the first 10 minutes of the movie even, is that they use that CGI to pack so many weird little details into the frame, right? Like one thing that always cracks me up is in that initial crash when Lucas is in the drag, when Lucas Black's in the drag race, in the new like where all the
Shangri-La development, yeah.
And he rolls his car, and you see like a CGI bottle of Tabasco sauce bouncing around. And it's like, now that's how you use CGI, right? It's just like throw some Tabasco in that car. And like just the first, I feel like if you can watch the first like 10 minutes of that movie and not already love it, like we're a different species, right? Because it's like it's so dense with cool stuff, like and it's like the best use ever of a Kid Rock song in a movie by far. Like you couldn't possibly do that better. And then when you get to Japan, and he's like the one rule is you can't drive a car, and then he like immediately goes to a car party, and like right away, like there's like an incredible amount of zany detail that we get just packed in. And again, like you're like 15 minutes of this movie, and you've already heard like 10 amazing songs. Like
at the starting of the week, at Summit Talks, you'll hear them speak. It's only Monday. Negotiations breaking down. See those leaders start to frown. It's Sword and Gun Day. Tomorrow never comes until it's too late. Everybody do well. Do what big. Come on and do the party now.
The total absurdity of that sequence you're describing is the first scene of the movie, and then the second broadly sequence of the movie where he goes to Japan. He does exactly the same thing. So you're getting a feel for, and you already know that this is the 5th time he's done that thing, because he's on his like they've already had to move several times, and so there's this. It's funny, right? It's funny to have that kind of comedic repetition of like he goes to this new place. He's kind of on probation or whatever, and he just does exactly what got him there. He crashes a car trying to race for a girl.
I keep thinking about that moment too, in between those two scenes where he's in the police, when he's in the police department, and they're all sitting, the Clay, the guy from Home Improvement, the popular dude, and the girlfriend, and Sean, and they're all sitting there like waiting to like get their talking to, and the girl looks over at Sean and he gives her this smile that he thinks is like sexy. It is like he's got like blood in his teeth and he just looks like repulsive and goofy. And I was just like, this is like he's not Paul Walker.
No.
And this movie knows he's not Paul Walker. And that's what we're gonna watch and really get on board. Because like this guy is bad sometimes at what he does. And like he thinks he's cooler than he is. And like that's kind of the fun of this movie. Because you know,
so spot on.
Everybody else is, you know, the rest of this, the joy of Fast and the Furious is absolutely that everybody's so hot and capable and good at things. And it's kind of fun to watch Sean Boswell kind of fuck it up a lot.
Yeah, just a goofball.
Yeah.
I was really impressed by the opening scene. I think maybe even more than I been before this time around, because I feel like one of the things, so you might read the like repeated mistake as kind of goofy or funny, and I think it is definitely supposed to be kind of funny, but there's also a way in which it's trying to establish like universal themes, because I think that opening scene, there's a really super clear definition of like two kinds of masculinities, right? There's the what is his name, Brandon Ty something, or
Zachary. Oh no,
Zachary Ty.
You're thinking of the Clay character? Oh no,
Yeah,
I just keep calling him the guy from Home Improvement. I'm so sorry.
We all know
Zachary.
who it is.
It's definitely
anyways, that
Zachary.
guy, so like he's the, you know, there's a super clear contrast. Like he's rich, he's privileged, he's the alpha male, he's popular, he's ultimately kind of self-destructive and sort of like underhanded. And then Sean Boswell, he's poor, right? He's scrappy, he's resourceful, he's the lone outsider, he's super self-possessed. And you have these kind of like, you know, masculinity kind of, I think, plays with all of those character traits in ways that can go super toxic, like the Home Improvement guy way, or
Zachary
like
Ty Bryan. Yep.
Very kind of Fast and Furious, which is, you know, this kind of like loyal, self-possessed, like these character traits that are actually really, you know, in some ways really good and worth promoting. And they immediately set up this like, it's a battle, right? And
it's a battle for the girl. The winner.
It's a battle for the girl. It's like
me.
the symbol of winning masculinity is like you get the girl. And I think it's really fun that one of the things I really laughed at this time was that you know, to do the race, they go to the Shangri-La, which is obviously like a class-based location, right? It's like they're developing all these kind of McMansions. And if anything's, you know, what's more McMansion than a Dodge Viper, right? Of course, the Fast and Furious series is going to make fun of that car. And so, but to win the race, he drives through one, right? Clearly, completely destroying it. Right? And I just thought that was pretty rad.
No, and like, so I joked earlier that it's basically the Karate Kid 2, but like more seriously, it does follow a very traditional arc for a martial arts movie, which is that you have this guy who's totally doofy and incompetent. And I think like this wasn't my sort of like Riggle and I eventually made it to this conversation when I was trying to sort of defend the Lucas Black, right?
I forgot about this.
Yeah, that so like it's like the whole one of the primary arcs that you'll find in a martial arts movie is somebody going from being doofy and incompetent to like a master, or at least to somebody who is like worthy of the person who trained him, to like worthy to represent them, right? So like this is a movie, and like it's very important that we start out with him being just a total doofus. And like the thing is that the key scene of the movie, I think, where we learn that he really has learned from Han not just how to drive, but like how to hold himself with honor or whatever, right? How to be a member of the relevant tribe, is the scene where he goes to see the Yakuza uncle played by Sonny Chiba, right? So that he's in this conflict with this other young person whose uncle is Yakuza, and he goes in, and it's like everybody's telling him, you can't just walk in and talk to this Yakuza, you're gonna get killed. But he walks in, he holds his head up, he talks to him respectfully, and he resolves the situation. He like comes to an agreement with him. And I think what we're supposed to get there, and I think that's the key scene, we're supposed to get there is like, this is what he's learned from Han, right? He's learned from Han how to be somebody, how to go from somebody who would like like, is going to crash his car into a McMansion to somebody who can like walk into a Yakuza den with his head held high and like know how to act, right?
Yeah, I forgot your martial arts take. I really do like that. I
Yeah,
think
it's like the driving is the martial arts, right? So it's like he learns the driving techniques from Han, but he's also learning virtue from Han.
I like
at the
that.
same time. Just
Yeah.
Wait, sidebar.
Yeah.
Matt, did you notice that Jason Tobin is in Fast 3? The main guy from from Warrior?
Yeah. He's also in Better Luck Tomorrow.
Yeah,
right?
I know, but I just never
right.
sort of
yeah.
noticed.
Young June. Yeah.
He has like one line, but
right. Yeah. No, he's in there.
I really like this this take, Matt. I was I do want to maybe I would kind of push back slightly though on it, because I was thinking that I like it because it gives an arc to his character, because the character is otherwise somewhat one dimensional. But I was sort of, when I watched the movie, and I've only seen it twice, but when I watched the movie, Lucas Black feels like he's brash at the beginning, and but he's confident too, but he also okay, actually, I will. I was going to say, actually, now I actually realize there's one other thing here, actually, where there is an arc. But I actually think maybe it's slightly different from what you said. Sorry, I just remembered something. So, okay, so I feel like he has a confidence in the beginning that he has at the end, too. It's kind of the same. Like, he's able to stand up to the bully at the beginning and at the end, in the way the Yakuza guy's kind of the bully with confidence. But actually, there is something that's different. Now, as soon as I started talking, I realized at the beginning in the credit sequence, you see a slow-mo thing of Sean watching a kid get bullied, right? They're like rubbing like paint on him or something, and he just kind of turns around, he turns away, he doesn't bother with it. But then later in the movie, he interferes to protect Bow Wow's character. Like he actually interferes, and he does seem like, in the first bit, he seems like he's a total outsider to everyone. Like, he's not part of this community at all. But by the time he's sort of integrated himself into that community with Han and the other characters, he does have loyalty to them and he wants to protect them. And that's what, in some ways, I mean, it's not quite what he's doing with the Yakuza boss, but it is what he's doing throughout with Han and everything, trying to like, I don't know, I guess settle the score honorably, protect Bow Wow and all that. And so I do actually think maybe there is an arc, but it's like it's a moral arc, right? He's like becoming a better human being.
Yeah, I noted that too, Justin. They flag his moral indifference actually in another scene too. It's in that sequence where the home improvement guy is like hitting a piñata that is of a like indigenous person, or like there's maybe like a war bonnet or something. And he kind of looks at it and he's like, he disagrees. You can see it in his face, but then he kind of turns away. And then maybe the very next scene, there's like the bullying, and he kind of looks at it and he's like, he kind of disagrees, but he doesn't do anything about it. And I think they're trying to establish that kind of like,
he's a little bit,
but
he lacks virtue, right? He's gonna learn both how to drive, and how and he's going to learn virtue and maturity and honor and respect from Han.
Yeah.
And that's what makes him, and it's like notice the final race he enters into with Dom at the end of the movie, right? Like, it's a totally different tone to it. He's no longer the like swaggering cocksure douchebag.
Yeah.
He's like, he's racing he's racing with respect for his opponent at the end.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, compare that race to the first race he does in that very garage, where he's like, I can do this. This is I've raced before.
Give me a 30-second lesson. Yeah. The best.
And he's humbled, and then maybe he will humble Dom. Probably not, because Dom is going to take the wheel and then fly or whatever he does.
Yeah, I mean, it does establish that theme of kind of like, virtue is inseparable from racing. Like, the fast virtues are like somehow essentially racing virtues that translate into like trust and character, which I think is cool. Like, because I mean, I think that's one of the things that I'm attracted to about the series in general, because that's a theme that just gets completely like, you guys really do have to watch 6, 7, 8 Maybe you can
someday.
maybe even stop at 8 after 8, but
We'll watch them all.
I would not recommend.
There's another martial arts parallel here, right? Which is that like the
Yeah.
virtuous martial artists do defeat the evil ones, right?
Yeah.
Ultimately, and it's
Exactly.
in part because the virtuous techniques are more powerful, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I sort of identify with that from like my skating career, where there is this kind of deep bond between skaters and the sort of the loyalty and love and sort of moral character of that intimacy. You just can't separate it from the activity. It's about being bonded through that activity, and there's something kind of essential to it. And I think the Fast series develops that really well, but I now see Fast 3 as kind of concentrating that in a really beautiful way.
If anything, actually, you could think of too. I'm just thinking about the arcs as well. The character of DK, he's kind of he's in a stasis with respect to being that kind of cocksure guy. He's not challenged in a way which requires him to improve himself, to be humbled, to develop any virtue. And you see this at the beginning when he's like, I'm going to destroy this guy. And at the end, he says the same thing. I've already beat him once, so it'll be easy. Like he scoffs at the challenge that's been put before him, even though he knows this guy, Sean, has beat his second in command, his lieutenant, Morimoto, and is clearly a much better driver than he was. But he's not able to like appreciate that this guy has actually shown improvement. So there's that kind of like what is that, like the downfall of hubris, right? Like his hubris is like part of what leads to his defeat.
Yeah, or like you can't just race to win. It's kind of that, like, it's established in that opening scene and sort of developed through the other character, through DK. Yeah.
There's another, I just another thing that you guys have mentioned about the whole franchise as a whole, which I can't totally speak on, but with respect to this movie, the idea of chosen family and finding a family in a kind of adoptive family, at least, I think it's like a striking feature of this film in particular because the character of Han, the character of what's her name, Neela, and also Sean, they're all immigrants to the country, and they're all trying to find, like, they don't have, in some ways, family members. I mean, Sean has his father, but he's in a very complicated relationship with his father, and Neela's mother's dead, and Han, we don't know where his family is. He's left wherever they're, I guess he's come from Korea or wherever, the States, wherever he was, and that idea of like finding a community that's creating a bond that's stronger than the blood bonds that you might share, I think it's actually quite powerful. And I think like that it is something that really resonated with me. We haven't really, it's been a while since we've seen the first one, so I can't remember all the details, but it did feel like they were, what I liked about this one was that it was taking themes that were present in the first one and sort of remixing them in a new way, but the themes were still present, and I sort of appreciated that. And that's why I said at the top, I like the idea of a possible future where Fast 4 is like taking those same themes and remixing them in a different way, with a totally different set of characters. And I think that it would have been it would have been kind of cool to see the franchise proceed in that direction.
Yeah.
I do think it gets back to it in interesting ways. It doesn't do the same thing over and over again, but like that's part of why I like 8. Is that, so I'll try to say this without giving too much away. But like in 8, where one of the main conflicts is that like Jason Statham character has killed a member of Dom's family, and yet they're sort of they reconcile. Like Jason Statham character and Dom reconcile in the movie, and a lot of fans bailed on it because they said, no, the Code of Family says he's enemy for life. But what happens is there's this wonderful line that for me is like one of the key lines of the whole series, which is where Dom says, "You shouldn't have come for a man's family," and Jason Statham says, "You shouldn't have come for mine." Right? And what was recognized is that they have the same values but different families. Right? The Jason Statham character has his own family with the same level of loyalty and commitment, and they're able to develop mutual respect through that recognition. So while not being a part of the same family, they're able to respect that everything each each one has done to the other one is coming from the same code of values. So they're able to reconcile through that mutual recognition, which to me is beautiful, actually, right? That again, like the first time that Dom breaks the code of family is out of recognition that this is actually a way of respecting the code of family.
Yeah. I think the thing that gets developed more is not just the sort of the theme of family and loyalty and love, but specifically of chosen family. Because like early on, you get the sense that Dom's posse is kind of cliquish or kind of really like it's like about like blood ties. And I think it's over the first 5 that they actually develop more of that theme of like chosenness. And then to where they can say in 8 that like, no, Statham's character can can be chosen too.
I mean, the other like precedent for some of this is, and I was for some reason I was thinking about this is Peter Pan. Now it changes it in a slightly different way, but it was partly because I was thinking about how Han, his like pleasure palace, whatever it is he's got, really does feel to me like Neverland or Neverland. You know, like it's this place where a lot of kids, because these are high school kids, a number of them are hanging out, doing adultish things, you know, and like, and they're, you know, and they're all like running from something, right? From broken families, whatever, they're the country they were born in, whatever it is. And they're in this sort of fantasy world, and it really is a fantasy world. I mean, it's portrayed as such. It's like if you were 18, and you were into cars, like you pretty much had everything at Han's joint. You've got music. If you're a heterosexual guy, you've got girls.
You got models that sleep in the little pods.
And you got those pod things. And you got cars. And it's like a garage. And I was like thinking about, you know, the other thing I was thinking about, this is just because this is a movie I grew up with, is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, right? Like the Foot Clan. It's like that kind of thing where they seduce. Now, of course, that's evil, right? That's Shredder like seducing these youths. But I got the same vibes of like the kids go to these places where it's like video games all the time. But then they're like forced to do evil things.
No, I mean, I think there is there's like throughout the whole franchise, there's just this sheer love of toys, you know, whether those are like weird tech gadgets or nuclear bombs or like, you know, I mean, Han's RX-7 is super dope, you know, and there's just this sheer love of like, we're just watching cool cars. And it's like you see this with, you know, our kids, like when they're just like, they just like my 1-year-old just like wants to carry this little race car around and like drive it on. It's just like this sheer pure natural joy of, for some reason, little techie things and toys and gadgets.
I've never wanted to drive a car fast in my life. My wife's the slowest driver I know, and she's like, car party. When it just, you know, and like, although I don't like approve of I don't approve of crime, it does make me happy that like it's genuinely a problem in LA that people emulate these movies, right? Like that does make the world aesthetically a better place, even if it's morally worse.
Yes.
The movie has had a huge impact on the car market.
Yeah,
totally.
The Fast One was based on a really kind of viral magazine article about I forget what it's called, Racer X or something, about street racing, like illegal street racing in LA and New York and stuff. So there's a thing in the 90s. And the 90s were full of these like extreme kind of, you know, underground extreme sports. I think this whole thing came out of that.
Nick, we're about the same age. Matt, you're a bit older, but I mean, when the first movie came out, I remember probably 2-3 weeks after that, there were people, like, it was then suddenly a thing where I was living where people would then get their cars together in parking lots to like, I don't know, show off, like, and it seemed like before the movie this was not happening, and then after
everybody was
movie,
having car parties.
Well, it was also because it came out around the time I think I was 16, so it was just like the perfect timing for me to suddenly be aware of who's driving what car. But it did feel like it was around that time that, and then I think they were doing some street racing.
Did you ever bring your Solara to a car party?
No, but someone I know at one of, so I went to one. I mean, we would. You know, I would be driving around and we'd see them. We'd be like, okay, let's follow this parade of cars. And and we one time there was someone who had a DeLorean. That was pretty cool.
What?
Yeah.
Whoa.
So
Yeah, I mean, I feel like especially when you grow up in California, like car culture, like you're just like taught to pay attention to cars. And, I feel, and then you come of age and you get your license at 16, which is like now as a dad, I'm like, what? So young. But yeah, you start to immediately be like, oh, I guess, do I want like a Honda Civic, and do I want a cool muffler, or like should I try to go fast? Like everyone seems to be interested in going fast. I do like going fast. I bought an old Porsche when I was a teenager.
nice.
Really?
And
Oh, you're cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it was-
No, I also had a
I'm just
Solara.
way too uncoordinated.
Matt, I think for Matt, it's vicarious living through the Fast and the Furious franchise. And if you're
I
right,
mean, yeah, like I'd like to stay safe over here, but I definitely like to watch y'all be dangerous. One of my best memories from when I was that age, my dad, who was a real character, he bought a Camaro, like a new Camaro, like at the time it was a brand new Camaro, like on a whim one day, like a V8, big muscle car, and one day. We were like sitting around the house drinking beers, and he was like, "You want to grab a sixer and take the Camaro on the back roads?" And we smoked a joint. I'm like 17. We like smoked a joint, and I'm very drunk, frankly. And he's like letting me drive this Camaro in the back roads, and he's like, "Let her out! What are you doing? Like, step on it!" And that was probably the one time I drove a car like that real fast, and I did live through it. But when I think back on my dad, that's a great memory.
that is really cool.
I mean, that's why you like Tokyo Drift.
That's
Yeah.
gonna say that's also why in his memory,
Yeah.
Tokyo Drift. It makes so much sense.
Oh, that's really cool, man. I do think that there is a kind of special bond that like you can have. It's a guy thing. I'm sorry, Laura. I mean, apologies to what is her name? Neela. Neela likes to race too, but I mean,
they
it's
always,
mostly guys.
Listen, I will say this for the franchise too. They always have their lady motorheads too.
That's true.
Yeah.
They do.
All right, so I think we should begin to put our final touches on this conversation. And one thing, I mean, we've already got your guys' rankings of the Fast franchise. One thing I would be curious to know, though, is like where, if somebody liked this movie in particular and the Fast franchise, and other car movies, other things. I know, I'm sure Matt has a lot of recommendations in this regard. I'll let you look some stuff up, Nick. I mean, I'm curious. Like, are there other sort of car culture movies that, or I'll put it this way, movies that embody some of the themes of like bonding, or in that kind of shared space between rivals, like you talked about your skating career and all that. Like, are there other movies that kind of capture that vibe? Because I think it is I'm thinking in particular. I mean, one thing that comes to mind for me when you said that is fighting. And like fighting movies, like boxing movies, which have that kind of, there's a special camaraderie that is formed often by two people who have to fight each other in a ring. But I'm curious if there are other films that either capture that or motor movies that you guys like.
That's a good question. I'd have to think about it more, but off the top of my head, the first thing that comes to mind is Top Gun.
Yes.
And I mean, I love Top Gun. Both the films, I think, kind of like sit in my psyche. I grew up with Top Gun, and I loved the second one too. But yeah, I don't have to think about it. I think Top Gun also plays with like masculinity in interesting ways, and sort of like explores it really quite deeply, from a different angle. But yeah, I don't know. I'll have to think about it. I have to say, my thoughts went more to, I think the next time I'm on the show, I have to find another film that combines American and Japanese themes.
I know. And Yakuza.
Yakuza.
In
you gotta
particular.
have it with the white fedora. Two movies.
The ramen spaghetti western.
Yep.
And then this and the Yakuza. I gotta think about what's next.
I got a soft spot. I don't know if anybody else does for Gone in 60 Seconds, which came out 1 year before the Fast and the Furious.
Are you talking about the remake or the original? You're talking about the remake.
The remake. I am talking about the remake.
Well, the movie I was going to talk about was the original.
Okay, fair enough.
Let's hear it. Yeah,
That's
all right.
classy.
I mean, well, like I love car movies, and I love them for a lot of different reasons. There's definitely a few that I want to recommend that are a little bit that maybe you wouldn't have seen.
Yeah.
But like one that I really, really love as the most, probably like as a car movie, just like motors and engines and metal, it's got to be the original Gone in 60 Seconds, because the guy who made that movie, he had the largest collection in the world of cars. This guy owned all these cars, like hundreds of cars, and he crashed his own cars
Whoa.
to make this movie. And I think he crashed, I forget the number, but I feel like he crashed 85 cars, something like that, like of his own cars to make this movie. And it's like the difference between the practical effects, right? And in these cases, it's not even, it's like he's just crashing cars. It's not even effects, it's stunts, right? But so between the sort of practical approach and then what you see today when you watch a car movie and it's just CGI cars zooming around, the difference is night and day, and you really feel that physicality of everything you're watching. And then the other side of the spectrum, my other favorite toy car movie is the most artificial one, which is Speed Racer, right? Which that movie, like no movie that's ever been made, I really believe this, out of every movie that I've ever seen in my life, and it's a lot of movies, I don't think any movie maintains a pure sense of exhilaration as well or as long as that movie does. There's like a 45-minute stretch of that movie that is just pure exhilaration. I'm like just energized by every second of it. I think it's just really magical the way that it's like that. It's also, I think, the best CGI movie ever made. It's like the way that that CGI is used in that movie. It's like it's this alternative grammar that just didn't get adopted. It's like this is what CGI could have been if like imagination had triumphed over convenience, right? If we used it, if instead of using CGI to try to emulate film cheaply, if we used it to create new possibilities, this is what movies might have been.
Yeah.
Right. So those are the two though that I think stand out the highest.
I wish that the audience could see my head nodding so extremely in response to Matt. I cannot agree more, Matt. That is perfectly put. You know what I realized actually after I asked this question, I realized I actually have a different question that I want to end on. This is an impossibly difficult question. Okay. So I want you guys to feel free to tap out if you don't want to answer it, but this is a deeply philosophical question. Okay?
Oh boy.
So the question is this, Laura, you don't have to answer.
I'll take a pass.
Matt and Nick. So Nick, you changed your mind on this movie. You went from thinking it sucks to thinking it's pretty good or perhaps even great. What do you think? How would you describe that change of mind? So, do you think like you went from believing something, like, do you think what you previously believed was false? Or do you feel like something affective changed about your that's like your emotional experience when you watch the movie? Do you feel like now when you see the movie, you're seeing it in a totally different way? Or is it just that you now cognitively think, oh, this movie's just good? Like, this is it's a tough question, but I'm just curious if you guys have thoughts on this. We can end with this very tough philosophical question.
Yeah. So, the short answer is, I was pretty sure it didn't have aesthetic value, and now I'm very sure that it does. And I think that's due in part to the aesthetic community between me and Matt. And it's due in part to the fact that the filmmakers changed the artwork. I think that's probably, I would have to think that through a little bit more, but I'm pretty sure that's the line I would want to take, which is that by placing this film in the series deliberately after the 6th entry, by writing 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, like in a certain way, they actually changed the work. So they make us see it differently and appreciate certain things differently. So yeah, I would say it became, it's hard to say it became aesthetically good. Yeah, somehow one in the same series of images, of moving images, like once lacked aesthetic value and now has it.
Yeah, this is great. I'm gonna paraphrase it back to you, and then Matt, I'm curious what you think. So Nick's thought is, prior to the 5, 6, whatever it was, with 4, 5, 6 being made, you would have thought I had the right view about Fast 3. It sucked.
Yeah.
Post 4, 5, 6 being made, now the right view is Fast 3. It rules
because the art has changed.
Yeah,
because it's
something like that.
Changed.
Yeah, the analogy is one that Matt actually gave me a while back, which is when you listen to gangster rap, a lot of times you'll hear early songs that are in some ways extremely offensive. They're talking about womanizing and murder and all kinds of things. But you have to hear those early songs in the story arc of redemption, or there's other ways of doing it, but often it's a kind of redemption, and the final tracks are about, I realized my ways were bad, and I want to be redeemed, or I'm a new person now. There are these like kind of transformative moments in the narrative arc of gangster rap albums, and not all of them obviously, but Matt convinced me of this, and that actually should change how you listen to those early tracks. I mean, we tend to really like be reductive about albums, and just hear a track kind of individualistically, but in fact, like a lot of times you should hear them kind of as part of a story arc or something like that, part of a narrative. And yeah, I think that's what we should do with Tokyo Drift. It's just that when you first watch the film, the future didn't exist. So it's
Right.
like the only, like its aesthetic value didn't exist. Yeah, it's not now. There's the album, but yeah.
Yeah. Matt, what do you think happened with Nick? I mean, how would you describe his change of mind?
Well, I mean, of course, I'm not going to dispute his phenomenology, but like Nick and I have a similar philosophical perspective in the sense that we both think that aesthetic values come from valuing, right? So we don't like, neither of us thinks that the values are just kind of out there in the world, these platonic ideals that we have to become receptacles in order to discover them, right? And so the way I think of it, like I'm a kind of voluntarist where I think that like what we get out of a work of art has a lot to do with what we put into it. And like a lot of the time when you're not appreciating a work of art, like in your mind, the way that you experience it is like, I'm just receiving it and I'm just not getting any value from it. Right. But my question is, well, how are you trying? Right. Because it's like something you do, right? Like getting value out of a work of art is something you do. So I think that like, this is a big part of my philosophical project in the philosophy of art, right? Is the idea that like, when we don't find value in an artwork, that there should be a pretty high bar for us to feel confident about that. We should not infer very much at all from our own responses, because there are so many alternative ways of engaging with the work of art. There's so many different questions you can ask. There's so many different things you can look at, ways you can look at them, that like I feel like it's often not worth trying. It's often not worth, like, okay, I got to try 10 different ways of engaging with this movie. It's often not worth it. But then we also shouldn't feel confident about its value, because we haven't really explored it. We haven't really tried to find it. So I think that like Riggle started asking different questions about the movie, right? And he started thinking about the movie in a different way and looking at it with a more sympathetic eye and so on. And I think that like that's how you get to the value, is by successfully valuing it.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Well,
I have to say, to qualify that my thing slightly, it's just that, if the album was never completed, I do think Matt opened my mind to things worthy of valuing in the film. If I were trying to make like an all things considered kind of judgment, I think I would still land on not my favorite, or not the best even. But then of course, then there's all the stuff about like the album being completed.
Yeah. So Matt's pointing out something which Nick you agree with, which is that the value of the art comes from the engagement that we do with it and with each other with respect to it. And then Nick you're pointing out that the art itself changed when later additions to the franchise recontextualized it. So that context is part of it and needs to be taken into consideration when we're evaluating it. And both insightful things for the audience to take away. So thank you very much, guys, for being here. Okay, so let's now go through and promote ourselves on social media and so on. So tell us, I'll start with Nick. Tell us where we can find you on Twitter, and what books people might want to read by you, because I know both of you guys have written books that a general audience might be excited about. So tell us about some of these things so people can find them.
Yeah. So I opted out of Twitter, I don't know, a little while ago. Couldn't hang with Musk. But I'm on Instagram. Heck, check me out, Nick Riggle, at Nick Riggle. And then a couple of books. This Beauty is my latest one. and it's about how valuing beauty can uh, give you kind of answers to like questions about why you should value your life under these circumstances where you didn't choose to live it, and it's actually full of all kinds of pain and challenge and difficulty. And the answer is by talking about Tokyo Drift with your friends and philosophers. uh, and, and then um, and then my first book, which is, I think, people report being pretty fun, On Being Awesome, A Unified Theory of How Not to Suck, from 2017. And otherwise, check me out on my website, nickriggle.com.
Excellent. Thanks, Nick. Thank you very much for being here. People should definitely read on. I've only read On Being Awesome. I haven't read the new one. So On Being Awesome is unsurprisingly awesome. Matt, tell us about. So you have a couple things in the hopper. I don't know how much you want to talk about.
Yeah, I got
those,
all kinds of stuff going on. So,
tell
first of
us.
all, let me say I am still on Twitter. You can find me. I'm Strohltopia, Strohl Topia, Topia. And that's also my website, which I don't update very much anymore, but sometimes. I'm still on Twitter, and let me tell you what you missed today. You missed Joyce Carol Oates fighting with Rebecca Solnit about like whether or not we should be murdering feral cats because like feral cats kill too many birds. And Rebecca Solnit was like on the side of the birds, and Joyce Carol Oates just owned her all over. It was like the Nobel Prize for Twitter ownage goes to Joyce Carol Oates today. So that's what you missed. That's why I'm not leaving that website. Is where else can you see Joyce Carol Oates own Rebecca Solnit? But
That's hard to do.
Yeah. Anyways, but I have a book that's already out. Why It's Okay to Love Bad Movies. I did an episode on Twilight. We talked about that, and then I've got a book coming out hopefully August called Hard to Watch. How to Fall in Love with Difficult Movies, which is about difficult movies. And then another one further down the pipeline that I'm going to keep a secret for now. But you can also find me under my name, Matt Strohl, Strohl, on Letterboxd.
Also, everyone has to read Why It's Okay to Love Bad Movies. It's a brilliant, wonderful, absolutely just great book.
Thank you.
Super fun. And check out.
You should also read this beauty, which I really enjoyed and just reviewed recently. My review's not out yet, but I wrote a glowing review of it for the Journal of Aesthetics and Art Criticism.
Thanks, Matt.
Amazing. You guys are getting drops all over the place. Thank you very much, guys, for being here. Check out Matt's book, Why It's Okay to Like Bad Movies. Also, if you want to hear more Matt and Nick, we did Twilight with Matt, we did The Box with Matt, and we did Tampopo with Nick. So check those out. We are at CowsPod on Twitter. You can find us on the web at cowspod.com. In 2 weeks, we will be talking to Veronica Fitzpatrick of Brightwell Dark Room about Anatomy of a Fall. So we'll see you then. Bye.